But it is now time for Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook, the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. Get to the casinos in Lincoln or in Omaha, and you can bet on nearly every major sporting event. And they've always got great promotions going on as well. Make sure you get to warhorsecasino.com to learn all about those. So Dan Holgerson was talking a little bit during the Husker show that DB's hosting, that we are that we've kind of been following along as it's going live on Twitter and things like that. Daniel Holgerson's talking, and he says they expect 20 to 30 transfer target visitors into Lincoln. Now, that's not that they're going to bring in 20 or 30 transfers, but let's say they bring in half of that lower number. Let's say they bring in 10 transfers, okay? Mm-hmm. You're looking at about a 20-person class, give or take one, depending on, looks like Jeremiah Jones is going to end up flipping to Missouri, but let's call it about 30 guys total, okay? Nebraska's currently, I believe, at about 140 for their current roster size. We're going to add 30 to that. That puts us at 170, okay?
Yep.
If I'm doing my math correctly, there are only 19 people currently listed as seniors for the 2024 season. So that brings us back down to, call it, let's say 150. Mm-hmm. You're looking at 45 guys. That's a hard number.
Yep.
45 guys that will enter the transfer portal then. Mm-hmm. We're at 8 or 10, including the two guys that entered before this week.
And now, is the original roster number with the guys who have entered now?
Not yet. That was
gotcha. So we're subtracting another 10.
So we're down to 40 full guys, or 40 additional guys outside of the 10 that are already in that are going to still enter the transfer portal.
Yep.
Or just decide to stop playing football. Some of the walk-ons, I imagine, may not try and transfer anywhere else. They're like, I'm at Nebraska. I want to be at Nebraska, whatever. Right. Or, I don't know. I do wonder about Jalen Lloyd, for instance, right? That's a guy who's been productive to a certain degree, has gotten on the field both of his first 2 years. But you've got Ja'Cory Barney, who seemed to take some of his touches last year. You've got Cortez Mills, very similar size, very similar skill set, who you would imagine is going to take some more of those touches this year. And you've got Jalen Lloyd, who's an incredible track athlete. Is that a situation where, does he want to try and continue to play football? Does he want to just focus on track where he could potentially be an Olympian? I mean, he's kind of that level, at least coming out of high school. He was sort of that level of track guy. Does he want to do that at Nebraska? Does he want to do it somewhere else? There's going to be a lot of those types of guys that maybe they don't leave, but maybe they're not on the football team anymore either. But you're talking about, including the 10 that are already in there, 50 guys. We're talking about 45, 50 guys that are going to be, that of names we're going to see, and we're only at 10. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to prepare that there's going to be a lot more.
Yes, yeah. And you just have to get used to this. And as you mentioned, too, there are going to be some that make the decision that, hey, I'm done with football because this was my opportunity. This is where I wanted to be to walk on.
I was a Nebraska kid. Yep. I wanted to walk on at Nebraska. That opportunity is not there anymore.
Not every player that enters the transfer portal is made the same. Some players will go down in levels.
Yeah.
And not just a group of 5. There are some players that could be, maybe not Nebraska's roster, but nationally, that could move down to Division II, to other levels of football.
Yeah.
Yes, there's plenty of layers of football that there is still to go as well.
And here's the thing about this is, I know there's going to be guys in that 45 to 50 that we're sitting here and going, man, really wish he was still in the fold, right? I'm sure a lot of people feel that way about Prince Will. But if it's happening to Nebraska, Nebraska's not the only team that has to cut down to 105. Mm-hmm. Now, Nebraska carries a heavier roster than a lot of people do. But again, a lot of those extra spots are going to be walk-on guys that we're not necessarily focused on to the same degree.
Yeah, 1 to 151 were not the same.
Yeah, exactly, right? So there's going to be the same level of guys leaving other programs that are leaving Nebraska.
Yes.
Right? And guys that, okay, maybe this guy's a better fit at this place. Maybe he's been more productive at a smaller school, and Nebraska wants to take a chance on the productivity as opposed to, it seems as though, this is anecdotal, but nationally, the guys that move up a level, that go from being super productive at a smaller or lower level to a power conference level, seem to have just as much, if not more, success than the guys that were highly touted recruits that haven't performed yet.
Yes.
Right? And so, Samaj Toure is a really good example for Nebraska that's happened. Mm-hmm. And you see it Cam Ward. You've got it all across the college football landscape right now. Dylan Gabriel is a great example. He goes from UCF to Oklahoma. Now he's playing on the number 1 team in the country.
Carson Steele's another one too, and now he's a pro.
Yeah, you've got a ton of these guys that they're super productive at lower levels that you're going to see come up as well. So this, more than any year, I'm not really worried about. If you want something I'm betting on, I'm not worried about Nebraska being able to find good guys in the portal to replace the guys that are departing, because there's going to be more guys in the portal this year than ever before.
Yep.
Just from a number crunch standpoint, we haven't even gotten to the guys that would have gone into the portal anyway because they don't like their situation.
When is this cutoff date for this 105 roster limit?
It's supposed to be, I believe, by the time your fall camp opens.
So, again, keep that in mind, too, that this 140-man roster could stick around through the spring game, and then you see another wave of evacuations.
Right.
But more than likely, a lot more will probably enter prior to that.
Yeah, so you're going to have a decent amount enter now.
Yep.
And then you've got a brief window after spring period ends. And then that's kind of it. Like, that's your last window there. So it will be interesting to see what the distribution is. I would imagine most of them leave now. That way you won't see – I don't think many people are going to take a chance not to have spring ball at their new location.
Yep.
Let's get to TK real quick. Wants to talk about Nebraska basketball. TK, what's going on, bud?
Good morning, fellas. How we doing?
Doing okay, TK. What do you got?
So it is bet on it, and so I'm going to let Ravi be the Nebraska ball hater that he is. If you at FanDuel, it's like plus 106 that Nebraska makes the tournament. Are you putting money on that bet?
Ooh, plus 106. I'd probably want a little more plus money than that, if I'm being honest. That basically puts it at even odds that they make the tournament. I think they are I think they're going to be a team that's squarely on the bubble just because of what I think the Big Ten is this year. And I do wonder if they're going to be able to score enough long-term to be able to be better than a bubble team. But if I'm looking at a bubble team, I probably want a little value there. I'd like it a little higher than 106. But, I mean, listen, Nebraska is a pretty good team that's going to probably end up very much in the conversation for an NCAA tournament bid.
You heard it here first, folks. Certified Nebraska ball hater, Ravi Lulla.
Appreciate it, TK. Listen, they're a good basketball team. Yeah. They do have, I mean, much like Creighton, they have some flaws.
Listen, when they get into those first 2 Big Ten games, I will be much more interested to see what their conversation will look like, because I think those will be more of a telltale sign of what Nebraska's season could be on the hardwood, more than what we have seen so far. Even with the Creighton game withstanding and everything else, I think that even these December 2 Big Ten games, I think will tell more about what Nebraska's postseason could potentially look like, more than what we saw in November.
Well, I think we're going to have a really interesting. I think we're going to have a really interesting time seeing if what Connor Essegian is as a basketball player at this point in his career. Obviously, he's had some really good moments for Nebraska early. Can he consistently be that guy throughout Big Ten play? We've seen this both with Creighton and Nebraska. As you get into conference play, the scouting reports on your guys get a little bit better. People, especially the second time through, obviously the Big East plays a true round robin and the Big Ten doesn't. But when you're playing some of these guys for a second time, that starts to get a lot more interesting when you've got a guy that doesn't have the track record of being a proven go-to scorer. And I think that's going to be what they need Essegian to be moving forward if they're going to continue to have this level of success and make the NCAA tournament. But, I mean, plus 106 is about the right number for Nebraska. I mean, it's about even.
Right.
And that's where I would put it. They're a bubble team. I think they're going to be a team squarely on the bubble, and that's what that number reflects is the plus 106.
And they're going to continue, as long as they keep on the trend that they've been on, they're going to keep receiving top 25 votes until proven otherwise. But I don't think that they'll break through until they have, again, the Big Ten breakthrough. They're going to need to beat a team that's within their conference because they're still 11th out of 18 in that conference. And even though, they were preseason pick 13th, you have to think that they've still got some leg room to go before they're having a real conversation about feeling secure on a tournament berth.
Well, and it's going to be interesting because I think the Big Ten is probably going to get, depends on how the season shakes out, but you're probably looking between 8 and 12 Big Ten teams in the NCAA tournament on most years. Mm-hmm. So Nebraska's kind of in the bottom half of that range, which, again, is reflective of that number. The last number I want to talk about, Kansas is a 3.5-point favorite tonight. That's down from 4.5 yesterday and earlier today. If this wasn't Creighton, I'd look at that and say, DB, that's a stinky line because that number should be bigger for number one Kansas 100%. Going in to CHI.
What do they know?
What do they know that we don't know? Because as we've learned, there's not a lot of free money.
No.
That's Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook.